In this video, I'm going to show you how to quickly and easily create a super fun dungeon for your D&D or tabletop RPG game. Okay, so I've been working on my very first RPG zine called Dragontown. So there's a link popping up to a video that explains all about the Dragontown zine. And one of the main goals of the adventure is to find your way into the castle where the dragon lives, sort of find out what's going on in Dragontown. And one of the ways to get there is through the castle's crypts, which is the dungeon that I'm going to be creating in this video. So let's jump over into Photoshop where I'm going to be drawing the Calamar Crypt, and I'll explain my approach to creating super easy, quick, fun dungeons. Now there are a ton of great videos out there all about creating dungeons, what types of rooms you can include, all different types of encounters, lots of different ways to keep your players engaged in running through the dungeon. And I think all that stuff is great and super important, but I like to keep it super simple. So when I'm creating a dungeon, there's really only three things I think about, and that is atmosphere, story, and encounters. So what I like to do is start off by thinking of my dungeon in its entirety and then writing down just a couple of points for each of those three things to get things going. So for this dungeon, it's a crypt, it's underground, it's dark, it's damp, it's smelly. That's all I really need to know for the atmosphere of this dungeon. The story is equally as simple. So the history part of this dungeon is that it's where all the people that used to rule this area, the Calamar Valley, are buried. And currently it is important to the player's story because it is a way for them to get into the castle via this underground crypt. And then the encounters. The players aren't going to be able to just walk through this crypt and get into the castle super easy. There's going to be a bunch of undead things to get in the way. So now that I've figured out the general atmosphere, the general story, and the basic encounters, I can start getting a little more detailed and go room by room. And then to make things even easier, I don't think you necessarily need to have the atmosphere, the story, and the encounters planned out for every room. I think you can just pick two of those points for each room and still create a super fun dungeon to run through. Okay, so let me start breaking this thing down, and hopefully this Calamar Crypt will act as a good example for how I approach planning things out. Okay, so the first room up top is the entrance to the crypt. It's the only way in, and the players aren't going to be able to just walk in. They're going to have to talk to the gravekeeper who has the entrance all boarded up. And the reason it's boarded up is because there's zombies inside the crypt. So when the players enter and they hear the zombies below, while the gravekeeper is bolting the door shut behind them, that creates instant atmosphere. I make a little list describing what the players will hear, see, and smell, and it can be super simple. So that's like, I would just write something like, the walls are damp, there's pale light peeking through the boarded up windows, and of course there's a horrible smell coming from within the crypt. Just a little bit of something to set the scene, create some atmosphere. Now the players are also going to notice that there's two statues on either side of the stairs leading down. These are old and worn, the faces are unrecognizable, but they can do a history check or something like that to figure out that these are the long dead original king and queen of the Calamar Valley. You know what, I'm not sure if I'm sold on the name Calamar. Coming up with good names is always the hardest part for me. That's what I'm going with for right now, but if you've got any good suggestions on a name for a valley, a castle, and a crypt that is super old and fantasy sounding, hit me up in the comments. Anyway, my point is you can very simply create a story by giving a place, especially a dungeon, just a little bit of history. And really all that means is just giving this place a reason to exist in the world. In this case, it's a crypt. It's meant to pay tribute to the leaders of old. And it's going to make your players' journey through this place just that much more believable and engaging. So that's two things, atmosphere and story, and that's probably enough to make a simple entrance room engaging enough. But I'm going to add the third thing, just a little encounter to make it that much more interesting. So obviously encounters can be fights, they can be traps or puzzles, or just some sort of interaction with an NPC, and that's what I'm doing here. So the players can spot a rat that's peeking out from a crack in the back wall. If they do something to make friends with that rat, it will lead them to some treasure later on in the dungeon. And this is just a super simple, very minor encounter that can be easily overlooked, but at the same time it could also turn into the thing that the players remember most about the dungeon, becoming friends with this rat. Okay, speaking of encounters, the second room in this dungeon, traveling further down into the crypt, is a room filled with zombies spilling forth from the graves in the walls. So I personally like to add a little extra dimension to the monsters, especially super basic D&D monsters like zombies, because the players might have encountered zombies in past games. So again, keeping it super simple, just giving these zombies the extra ability to puke and fart on the players. Just add one little extra thing to a combat encounter that will surprise the players. So if you want to find out more about my approach to creating fun monsters, check out the last video I did about homebrewing enemies. Lots of great examples in there. Okay, so each of these recessed graves have names and dates, and the latest person that is buried here died several centuries ago. And really it just reinforces that the history of this place is that there hasn't been a king or a queen or any noble person living here for a very long time. And it also lets the player know that this place that they're in right now is the oldest place they've been at this point in the adventure. You know, these details won't affect the player's story, but they do create a story for this place and make it that much more believable for the players. But there's still further to go. The players have to go down the spiral stairs one more time to the third floor, which will take them to a long hallway that leads directly underneath the castle. To get to the other side, though, the players are going to have to pass a dozen sarcophagi? Is it sarcophagi? I think it's sarcophagi. Some of them are sealed shut with hollow groans coming from within, and others are open and empty. So you can see it only takes a sentence or two to describe a spooky place like a crypt, but it goes a long, long way in setting the mood. So eventually the players are going to run into a ghost, a spectral figure that resembles one of the statues the players saw in the entrance. I don't want to spoil this encounter, but this ghost is going to give the players some clues about what's going on in the castle, and also give a little hint at adventures to come after Dragontown has returned to normal. So yeah, this was a super fun, super easy dungeon to come up with. 3 rooms, each with an encounter, a little bit of description to give atmosphere, and some little story bits to help this crypt make sense in the world that the players are exploring. I think this is a perfect little dungeon for a single session. And yeah, that is the Calamar Crypt. So I really hope you try out making your own dungeon, and hopefully this video made the process seem fun and easy. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. And if you want to find out more about this Dragontown zine, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to be alerted when new videos about Dragontown go up every week. You can also check out the link to the playlist that I've created with all of the Dragontown videos down in the description. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!